Discover the incredible hidden stories of Egyptian mythology. 10 transformative tales exposed. Lisa stared at the stack of dusty notebooks, unearthed from the ancient trunk in her mother's attic, feeling the weight of her unfulfilled dreams pressing down on her chest. The musty smell of paper and a fading past filled the air, swirling with memories of her grandfather, a man she barely knew, but whose legacy resonated within her like a distant echo. She had always wanted to inspire, to ignite curiosity in a generation bound by standardized tests and rigid expectations. But now she felt suffocated, her mother's illness tying her down, demanding her attention, her patience, her very will to dream. Despite the relentless ticking of the clock, marking time spent unwisely, another stack of notebooks lay before her, waiting to reveal their secrets. She flipped through pages filled with illustrations of gods and goddesses, narratives of resilience steeped in Egyptian mythology. The stories vibrated with life, pulsing with confrontation and victory. Where did this spark come from? Was it too late for someone like her to wield such power, to teach about heroes rising from their own ashes? Lisa felt a surge of hope, tempered by uncertainty. She recalled her students, faces blank as they dutifully filled in worksheets, minds dulled by the routine of line after line, standardized expectation after unfocused instruction. The thought of sharing these tales illuminated a corner of her spirit, yet doubt loomed large. What would the principal say? Would her colleagues snicker, dismiss her visions as whimsical distractions? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tension wedged itself deeper within her as she fought internal battles. The heaviness of her mother's decline shadowed every fleeting moment of inspiration. Financial stress nibbled at her sanity, draining the passion out of her life. Would she be able to manage her responsibilities while pursuing this dream? Or was this just another fantasy destined to slip through her fingers like grains of sand? But the notebooks ignited something in her beyond that doubt. They whispered a hidden truth of heritage. Her grandfather was an archaeologist who challenged institutional prejudice in foreign lands. Courage wrapped in chains of history began to surge within her veins. Shouldn't she honor that legacy instead of watching her own passions wither? That night, as shadows draped her home, Lisa resolved to confront her principal with her newfound vision. As she prepared her lesson plan, her heart raced, irregular and wild. What if he dismissed her, silenced her voice like he had done so many times before? What if her aspirations crumbled under the rigid expectations she loathed? Standing at the brink of that meeting tomorrow morning, Lisa's thoughts twisted in the chaos of fear and ambition, desperate to embrace her identity, but terrified of the impending fallout. Would she have the strength to face her fears? Or would the fear of failure snuff out the tiny flame of rebellion in her heart? The future hung uncertain, and she braced for a confrontation that could either change everything or leave her trapped once more, the burdens of both past and present bearing down on her shoulders. The next morning dawned, ethereal light streaming through the curtains, illuminating the path forward like a spotlight. Lisa's heart thudded as she dressed, the fabric of her clothes forming a layer of armor against the day ahead. She rehearsed her approach repeatedly in her mind, but each time, doubt seeped in like water through a crack. At the school, the walls bespeaking decades of unyielding tradition seemed to close in on her with every step she took towards the principal's office. Each footfall was a jarring reminder of the safety net she teetered on, the steady paycheck, the familiar faces, the comfort of complacency. Yet, a fierceness began to stir within her, fueled by the stories of gods overcoming insurmountable odds. As she stood before the door, a voice inside her urged her to abandon the facade of meekness that had defined her career thus far. Today was different. She was not merely a teacher. She was a vessel of change, ready to breathe life into her stagnant classroom. With a deep breath, she knocked, the sound echoing down the hall like a call to arms. "Come in," beckoned Principal Harrow, his voice cutting through the stillness. Stepping inside, she was struck by the cluttered desk, paper mountains cascading haphazardly, much like her own chaotic thoughts. Harrow looked up, brows knitted in mild disinterest. "Lisa, good morning. What brings you here?" His tone was professional, but there was an undercurrent of skepticism lurking, an implicit challenge hanging in the air. "I have an idea for my classroom," she began. The moment her voice emerged, uncertainty flourished, but she pressed on, fueled by the urge to connect the dots between her passion and the educational framework suffocating her. "I want to integrate stories from Egyptian mythology into our lessons." The principal's expression soured. "Lisa, you know our curriculum is strictly aligned with standards," he replied, crossing his arms defensively. "We can't deviate for what some might consider frivolous themes." Frivolous. The word struck her like a physical blow. Did he even understand what was at stake? These weren't just tales. They were lessons in resilience, bravery, introspection, and the pursuit of identity. But, "Mr. Harrow, these stories could ignite a love for literature in my students. They could see themselves in the heroes and heroines overcoming great struggles," she argued, her heart racing as her voice grew more impassioned. Harrow leaned back in his chair, evaluating her as if she were an untested theory. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, Lisa, but remember, we have obligations to prepare students for tests, for outcomes dictated by higher authorities." And just like that, her dreams felt tethered once again to the anchor of standardization. She saw a flicker of potential in the corner of Harrow's eyes that quickly extinguished under the weight of bureaucracy. Was her desire to share this knowledge simply a private wish to escape the confines of her reality? In that moment of hesitation, she grasped a page from her grandfather's legacy, how he had defied establishments to uncover stories buried beneath the sands of time. Could she channel that same courage? Or would the fear of rejection override that yearning within her? "Then let me show you," she finally declared, voice unwavering. "Let me draw a lesson plan that meets those requirements while incorporating these stories. If it fails to engage, I'll abandon the idea." The principal stared at her, mouth slightly agape, as if he had never expected such determination, such a rebellious spirit, to emerge from her. "All right," he said slowly, considering her words. "You have 1 month. But don't expect any leniency when it comes to assessments." Lisa nodded, the tension in her body clenching and releasing like a vibration after a struck chord. This was her moment, her chance to define herself with purpose. As she walked away from his office, adrenaline surged within her, a potent mixture of excitement and fear. This was not just about the mythology, nor about her teaching techniques. It was a chance to reclaim her voice. Would she succeed in her integration of these tales, or risk more than just professional humiliation if it didn't resonate? Tonight, she would pour her thoughts into crafting the lesson plan, destined to be a testament to her belief in the transformative power of storytelling. But with that weight of expectation came a new burden. What if she failed not only her ambitions but also the students who looked to her for guidance? The road ahead was unclear, but a spark lay within her, urging her onward. Would the stories of gods and goddesses breathe life into her classroom, or would she face the unrelenting tide of institutional disapproval again? The quest for her voice had begun, and the stakes couldn't be higher. In the quiet solitude of her living room, Lisa sat surrounded by piles of books on mythology, her heart racing with anticipation and uncertainty. She clutched a pen, its tip hovering over a blank sheet, the stark whiteness reflecting her own blank mental landscape. How would she transform the weight of tradition into a vibrant lesson plan? The challenge loomed larger than she had anticipated, each tick of the clock echoing her hesitation. The words she wished to weave felt like intricate threads lost in a fraying tapestry, and she struggled to gather them. Steeling herself, she took a deep breath, recalling the moments spent with her grandfather, his stories enveloping her like a warm blanket. Each parable sparked a fierce longing in her chest, a yearning to reconnect her students not only with their heritage, but also with their own potential. Could she evoke that same sense of wonder she had felt when he shared tales under a starlit sky? This was her mission now, to breathe life into those ancient myths and invoke their lessons in a modern setting. Determination fueled her fingers as she scrawled potential topics for her lesson plan. The tale of Isis and Osiris, a story of resilience and rebirth. The strength of Sekhmet, a goddess embodying the fierce power of protection, or the trials of Ma'at, showcasing the value of truth and balance. Each story buzzed with energy inside her mind, intertwining with her own struggles against conventional boundaries. Yet, doubt clawed at her resolve. What if her choice of stories was driven more by nostalgia than educational merit? She wrestled with the question, confronting her insecurities about being deemed unqualified. The anxious thoughts swirled around her like dark clouds, casting shadows over her ambition. It felt as if every inkwell of creativity she opened may merely spill onto a barren page, leaving behind a mark of failure. With a sudden surge of clarity, she recalled her reason for teaching: to inspire her students, ignite curiosity, and challenge their perceptions. If Egyptian mythology could serve as a bridge connecting those aspirations, then why shouldn't it be woven into her lessons? Lisa picked up her phone and called her closest colleague, Sam, whose enthusiasm for innovative teaching methods was contagious. "Hey, Lisa, what's up?" Sam's voice was bright, cutting through her uncertainty. "I need a sounding board," Lisa confessed, laying bare her concept of integrating mythology into their curriculum. As she spoke, she could hear the excitement in her voice growing, expanding like a balloon ready to burst. "That's brilliant. Just think of how much your students would connect with that," Sam replied. "Have you considered framing it within broader themes, like courage, betrayal, and redemption?" Framing. It clicked for Lisa, a way to anchor the mythology within the fabric of their required curriculum. "I haven't," she admitted, awash in gratitude for Sam's insight. Using those themes could make the stories way more accessible. It could also prepare them for the assessments by showing how these myths reflect real-life dilemmas. As they brainstormed, Lisa's doubts began to dissolve, replaced by a burgeoning confidence. Her narrative was shifting from mere survival in the educational system to becoming a pioneer within it, bold and resolute. However, her excitement was tempered by the reality of her deadline. The month was ticking away too quickly. She couldn't afford to squander time in hesitation any longer. With her framework solidifying, she began writing lesson objectives that combined creativity with educational standards. By the end of the day, the blank sheet was no longer a symbol of her fears, but rather a canvas painted with potential. Yet, as she prepared to leave the chaos of her thoughts behind, she felt a whisper of dread. The possibility of pushback from students unaccustomed to such change weighed heavily on her. What if they resisted these new ideas, dismissing the very tales she was passionate about? The pressure tightened around her like a constrictor-esque grip. Would she emerge victorious? Or would she face the sting of rejection once again? As Lisa stared at her lesson plan, now brimming with ideas, she recognized a crucial personal conflict was brewing. It was time for her to confront not just the institutional limits but her own insecurities. What awaited her were not just tales of gods and goddesses, but reflections on her own ability to challenge the status quo. Could she transform not only her classroom but also herself in the process? The pressure hung thick in the air, and the path ahead remained fraught with uncertainty. The question loomed larger than the stories she sought to tell. Would she remain true to the voice she was beginning to discover, regardless of the resistance? Each stroke of her pen penned a new destiny, but would she have the courage to execute it? The following days whirled into a blur of frenetic activity as Lisa dove headfirst into her lesson planning. Each morning, she awoke with a sense of purpose, fueled by both excitement and an ever-lurking apprehension. The myths she was preparing to teach radiated tales brimming with wisdom, yet she remained acutely aware of her students' potential indifference. Was she leading them toward enlightenment, or would they roll their eyes at the very idea of delving into ancient stories? Stepping into the classroom, Lisa felt a flood of anxiety rush through her. The notes in her hand weighed heavily. She gripped them as if they could tether her to a more certain reality. "Today, we begin a journey into the rich tapestry of Egyptian mythology," she announced, attempting to project conviction. As the eyes of her students slid towards her, she focused on a few faces curious, apprehensive, and indifferent. She realized yet again how much depended on her ability to engage them. Gradually, she unfolded the stories with palpable enthusiasm, recounting the drama surrounding Isis and Osiris. As she narrated the tale of Isis's indomitable spirit, her voice steadied. The initial whispers of resistance morphed into attentive silence. She saw appreciation spark among the students, flickering like the golden light of the sun illuminating ancient hieroglyphs. But when she introduced Sekhmet, the goddess of war, an unexpected wave of dissent floated through the classroom. How is this relevant to us? One student challenged, arms crossed defiantly. The question stung, slicing through her budding confidence. Internally, Lisa grappled with the implications of being questioned, the discomfort blooming within her chest like wildflowers bursting from concrete. But as she wrestled with that moment, she felt the hint of something deeper emerging. Her voice steadied, a new sense of authority lending strength to her words. It's about more than just old tales. These stories reflect our struggles and triumphs today. Sekhmet's ferocity can teach us about the strength needed to protect what we value. The murmurs softened, curiosity beginning to replace skepticism. In the days that followed, she melded more thematic elements into her lessons, encouraging group discussions that allowed her students' voices to rise and intertwine with her own. As they engaged with challenging questions about courage, betrayal, and redemption, Lisa found herself in an exhilarating exchange, each student's perspective adding depth to her understanding of the material. The classroom wrested from her control might have been intimidating, yet here lay an opportunity for growth, not just for her students but for herself. Weeks rolled on, and Lisa set a major milestone, a project where students would create their reinterpretations of the myths discussed. Picking up on the initiative was thrilling, yet a familiar twinge of self-doubt surfaced. What if their interpretations fell flat? What if they chose to dismiss the lessons she had poured so much passion into? The fear pulsated through her like a steady heartbeat. When she finally received their submissions, her anxiety peaked. Students presented concepts that surprised and delighted her: an animated digital retelling of the battle between light and darkness, and a poignant poem reflecting modern societal struggles through the lens of Ma'at's quest for balance. The brilliance of her students' creativity shone, pushing her insecurities into the background. However, with the euphoria came new revelations about her own capacity for leadership. It became abundantly clear that this wasn't solely about the stories, but rather their ability to empower voices, including her own. She embraced the shift. Teaching was no longer a burden or a battle, but a journey of mutual discovery. Where would this imaginative connection lead next? A looming question hung heavily in the air, as Lisa pondered the breadth of lessons yet untold. The real test was not just within herself, but the challenge of guiding her students toward experiences of their own. Would they step beyond the myths and find their own stories of courage waiting? As the following weeks unfolded, Lisa found herself at a crossroads, no longer merely an instructor but a budding facilitator of discovery. With each session, she noticed changes not only in her students but within herself. The flickering candle of self-doubt was giving way to an illuminating sense of purpose, albeit sporadically extinguished by the persistent whisper of insecurity. One afternoon, as she prepared for yet another class focused on the trials of the goddess Isis, Lisa gazed out the window, momentarily losing her focus. The world outside bustled with activity: children playing, couples strolling, everyone seeming to embrace their narratives, while she strived to guide her own. Just as her thoughts swirled into chaos, the bell rang, cutting through her reverie. Okay, everyone. Today we're going to explore how personal experiences influence our interpretations of mythology, she declared, heart racing with both anticipation and dread. Was she pushing too far, or was she finally beginning to resonate with them? Breaking the class into small groups, she watched as they engaged with infectious enthusiasm. A palpable energy filled the room as her students began sharing personal reflections alongside the tales of ancient deities. It struck her this wasn't just about the myths. It was about connecting the lessons of the past to their contemporary lives. Yet, as the creative conversations flowed, Lisa found herself questioning her own narrative. In this cacophony of voices eager to share, would she remain an integral part? Or would she fade into the background, overshadowed by the enthusiasm she had sparked? It was both exhilarating and terrifying. The idea of stepping aside temporarily to give her students the space to shine was one thing. Relinquishing her role entirely felt like a formidable risk. During an impromptu classroom discussion, one student, Ava, confessed, "I always thought these stories didn't matter. But they do, like when I think about my own struggles with feeling invisible at school." The weight in that sentence pierced Lisa's heart, striking a chord of understanding in both of them. Inspired, Lisa countered, "Exactly. These stories are mirrors reflecting our lives. When we embrace our experiences, we breathe life into these myths. It makes them relevant, doesn't it?" Suddenly aware of the burgeoning trust in that room, an idea began to crystallize in her mind. What if they could host a creative showcase, presenting and performing stories through skits, art, or music? She envisioned a platform for the students to voice their newfound insights not only about the ancient tales they'd come to appreciate but about their personal stories that intertwined with those myths. However, as enthusiasm brewed at the thought of the showcase, her old apprehensions resurfaced. What if these ideas were too ambitious? What if they failed to connect? Despite the anxiety swirling within, Lisa felt undeniably drawn to pursue this path. She recognized an opportunity not just for her students but for her own growth as a leader. "Let us take these stories and amplify them through our unique voices," Lisa proposed, her determination ignited. A chorus of agreement filled the classroom, but behind that agreement laid the subtle undertow of her lingering doubts. Would her confidence manifest in ways that would empower her students to engage with their own narratives and, in turn, reveal more about her own journey as a teacher? And as she pondered this, the faint echo of impatience arose, whispering a continual reminder about how quickly time could slip through her fingers. The showcase now loomed like a horizon beckoning her forward, yet Lisa could feel the shadows of fear nesting within her heart. Her path to self-discovery lay bound in the intermingled destinies of her students and herself. The time was drawing near. Preparations had to begin. Would her leap into creativity seal her budding identity as both a teacher and a learner, or would fear pull her back into the shadows? Those questions circled her mind as she eagerly plotted, the next step's wild ideas sparking within her more brightly than ever. Yet a foreboding question remained. What darker challenges lay ahead, threatening to unravel not only her burgeoning plans but also the fragile self-assurance she had only begun to embrace? As the date for the showcase approached, Lisa's initial excitement morphed into a dull undertow of anxiety. The classroom, once a canvas of bright ideas and burgeoning confidence, now felt like a pressure cooker, with the anticipation permeating every corner. The students were buzzing with creative energy, yet she felt detached, standing on the periphery of the very phenomenon she had ignited. It was bewildering, this clash between inspiration and self-doubt. During their preparation sessions, Lisa noticed how engaged her students were writing, rehearsing, and sharing. They spoke of their art pieces and performances with a fervor she had never seen before. When they excitedly invited her into their process, she found herself hesitating. Would they see her as an authority figure, or would they perceive her as a fellow storyteller? The looming uncertainty tightened around her, squeezing any remnants of her burgeoning confidence. In one session, as Ava animatedly detailed her vision for a group performance, Lisa was struck by the depth of the students' emotional investments. They were connecting their personal struggles to the myths, unearthing layers of meaning she had not anticipated. Wasn't this the whole point of their journey together? Yet, instead of feeling elated by their progress, she felt a formidable weight of responsibility, the fear of letting them down. She nodded, pretending to be engaged while questions swirled through her mind. What if her contributions were insufficient? What if they failed to bring their interpretations to life? Suddenly, the showcase, which once seemed like a bridge to innovation, appeared more like a chasm of uncertainty waiting to swallow her efforts whole. One evening, Lisa sat alone in her living room, surrounded by the remnants of the student projects she had brought home to reflect on. Scattered scripts and sketches lay on the coffee table, all a testament to her students' hard work. Yet they felt distant, almost foreign to her now. She reached for her phone and thumbed through the messages from her students, who expressed their excitement and hopes as she read through their words. Something clicked inside her. It became obvious this showcase was not solely her responsibility. It was a shared journey, a collage of narratives that featured everyone. That sense of clarity lifted her spirits momentarily. She took a deep breath and engaged in her thoughts. She could still encourage them, wave her own fears goodbye, and embrace their collective story. She didn't have to shoulder the weight alone. She could guide from behind, illuminating their paths rather than commandeering the spotlight. With renewed resolve, she reached for a blank sheet of paper. Instead of drafting her presentation notes, she wrote down affirmations, reminders of her own worth and her role as a facilitator, not merely an overseer. Each sentence echoed with her newfound understanding. This was about their stories and their voices, and her duty was to amplify them. In the days that followed, as the showcase date drew even nearer, Lisa felt the dread begin to dissipate, replaced by exhilaration over the impending celebration of courage and creativity. She met with each group, providing constructive feedback and suggestions while also stepping back to let them take the reins. There was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere, one filled with optimism, authenticity, and collaboration. What unsettled her, however, was the subtle flicker of doubt that remained, a reminder of the lurking shadows she could not quite shake off. Behind her efforts was a nagging voice whispering that she was not truly ready for this transition as a facilitator. What if their performances didn't resonate as anticipated? The moment pressed closer, revealing the fragility of her confidence once again. As the night of the showcase approached, Lisa acknowledged both her excitement and her trepidation. Was she genuinely ready to embrace her role, or would she permit the fear of failing to tether her? Because now, the stakes were higher than merely teaching. It was about being part of a transformational experience for her students and herself. And deep down, she wondered whether she was truly equipped to facilitate this uncharted territory of emotional vulnerability and artistic expression. As the clock ticked away, anticipation hung thickly in the air, each second pulling her closer to the climax of their collective journey. The moment had arrived where she would need to confront her greatest teacher, her own doubts. Would she find the courage to let her students' stories take flight? The day of the showcase dawned with a mix of embarrassment and resolve. As Lisa stepped into the classroom, a wave of nostalgia hit her. The vibrant posters they had created, the scattered remnants of creativity around the room. Yet the familiar warmth didn't quell the nagging anxiety gnawing at her insides. Today's realizations, though empowering, felt precarious and fragile, like a paper doll chain dangling above a flame. She glanced around, spotting her students engaged in last-minute preparations, their conversations buzzing like a swarm of excited bees. Ava and her friends were huddled together, cross-referencing their notes, their laughter infectious. For a moment, Lisa reminisced about the early days when she felt grounded, filled with purpose and clarity. But that buoyant feeling felt miles away. "Ms. Adams?" Ava's voice broke through the fog of her thoughts, pulling her back. "Do you think we should change the lighting for our performance?" The question lodged a spike of irritation in Lisa. Wasn't it enough for them to be so focused? Instead of responding with frustration, she caught herself. "Let us discuss it together," she said, injecting a fragile calm into her voice. "What mood do you want to create?" The approval and confidence shining in Ava's eyes reframed Lisa's irritation into a tentative optimism. Each interaction now felt like a thread weaving them into a tapestry. As she bounced between groups throughout the day, she relished moments of reflection. With every feedback session, Lisa saw more of herself in these young creators. They exhibited an audacity to explore their vulnerabilities, something she always grappled with. Yet, as her students expressed their stories in vivid detail, the omnipresent cloud of doubt continued to whisper insidiously in her ear. Was she merely reflecting their strength, or was there genuine courage in her own transition to a facilitator? Later, during a quiet moment, Lisa observed them as they finalized their performances. The rehearsals revealed fragments of their own truths intertwined with stories of ancient myths. A critical realization ignited. Her nervous energy permeated their atmosphere, intensified by her unresolved fear. Steeling herself, she recognized that if she wanted to embrace vulnerability, she had to model it. Taking a deep breath, she stood before them, interrupting their bustling activities. "Can I share something with you guys?" A hush fell over the room, eyes now trained on her. Something shifted within her, the words threading together with newfound courage. "I've been feeling nervous about how today will go. I want you all to succeed so much that I sometimes worry about everything being perfect." The honesty in her admission unraveled her tension. It made her real. "Oh, Ms. Adams, that happens to all of us," Ava reassured her. "We're all a bit scared." That shared acknowledgement transformed the dynamics. It was as if she flung open a window, allowing fresh air to circulate through their collective anxieties. Suddenly, all Lisa had feared became a source of connectivity. She saw how their stories, alongside her own vulnerabilities, uniquely braided them together. It was not merely her responsibility to create a perfect showcase. It was a platform for discovery and growth, a mosaic comprised of individual narratives. As the clock edged closer to their moment, she felt the sexual tension multiply, the realization of her role crystallizing. It became a privilege to be a caretaker of their creativity. In that instant, she understood. This was not just about overcoming her fears. It was about embracing them alongside her students. In the hushed anticipation that filled the room, Lisa relished the change within herself. But beneath that excitement, a deep-rooted fear remained. What if the audience failed to connect with their narratives? Would her apprehension have been for naught? As the backdrop of the stage loomed large, she steeled herself with a final thought. To confront the unknown was to open the door for unimaginable growth. And just then, with the countdown looming, Lisa realized that the true measure of success may not be in the applause at the end, but rather in the journeys shared in the stories of the evening. As she walked toward the stage with her heart pounding, a thought lingered in the air. Would she be able to handle whatever came next? The stage lights bathed Lisa in warmth as she stepped into the spotlight, the audience a blurred sea of faces before her. Instinctively, she grasped the edge of her shirt. The familiar play of nerves threatened to overwhelm her again. But instead of retreating, she breathed deeply, harnessing that same trepidation her students felt moments earlier. Each heartbeat reminded her of the connection they had forged, a bond made of shared experiences and vulnerability. As the performances unfolded, so did the depth of stories that emerged. With each student stepping forward, the energy shifted. Their narratives intertwined with their own realities, echoing lessons from the myths they had explored. Lisa watched as they transformed, each one embodying their characters, the stories woven deeply into their identities. The warmth she felt for them fused with admiration. They were not just showcasing a performance, they were unveiling pieces of themselves. Inwardly, Lisa began a struggle with discomfort. Was she on the cusp of recognizing her own stories, or merely clinging to the reassurance of guiding others? The reflection gripped her, churning beneath her skin. She wanted so desperately to be a source of strength, yet she also felt that same need for affirmation lodged deep within her. She often questioned if she was the deft instructor guiding them through the labyrinth of creativity, or if her hands trembled too much to navigate confidently. Ava's performance was the turning point. The young girl stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly, yet her expression shone with an authenticity that radiated through the room. There was a moment when Ava faltered, doubt flickering across her face. Lisa leaned forward, instincts demanding she intervene, to shield the fragile confidence like a protective mantle. She caught herself, however, rooted in the knowledge that it was in these very moments of vulnerability where true strength lay. Together, they were navigating uncharted territories of self-expression. Lisa's heart surged with pride. Perhaps it wasn't her role to constantly shield them, but rather to guide them through the messy process of creating art, succeeding, failing, and discovering within the spectrum of uncertainty. The applause that erupted was electric, enough to vibrate the floorboards beneath their feet. Pride and relief washed over her as her students basked in the validation they so richly deserved. Yet amidst this celebration, Lisa faced an unsettling realization. The applause was not just for their stories, but also a validation of the path she walked. Yet the questions loomed larger than ever. What if their triumphs only scratched the surface of who they were? Or worse, what if they melted away into anonymity once the spotlight dimmed? It tugged inside her, a need to ensure they remained nurtured beyond their performance. Would she have the courage to push for exploration and deeper understanding in future endeavors? As she approached Ava, who now danced amidst her friends with joy, Lisa felt a decisive weight settle within her. She needed to carve a path that would not just elevate their artistry but challenge each individual to confront the echoes of their insecurities and realize their capacity for growth, even after the applause faded away. That realization solidified a new resolve within her. She would not allow fear to dictate their journey. Confronting her own apprehensions was essential. As words of encouragement spilled from her lips and enveloped Ava, Lisa envisioned potential that extended well beyond the stage. Yet, lingering behind the smile she offered her students was a gnawing sense of what lay ahead. How would she handle the deeper issues waiting to be explored in the years to come? Was she truly ready to delve into her own untold stories while guiding others through theirs? And as the last strains of celebration faded into the night, one question hung dense in the air. Would she have the resilience to face the narratives of her own life that still lingered in the shadows, awaiting their moment to be heard? The day after the performance, Lisa awoke to the residue of yesterday's energy still thrumming underneath her skin. Despite the excitement of the students' triumphs, a palpable heaviness settled upon her thoughts. She found herself in an internal tug-of-war, ambivalence swirling around her as she prepared for work. Was she really prepared to confront the deeper layers of self-discovery that had begun to unfurl? As she drove to the school, she meticulously reviewed the lessons she intended to implement. With each passing moment, the decision to challenge her students, to dig deeper into their emotional landscapes, grew more formidable. She needed to embody the courage she preached. It was time to dismantle her comfort zone. Stepping into the classroom, a hushed anticipation enveloped her. The chairs were arranged in a semicircle, a physical representation of openness she wanted to cultivate. As her students filed in, energy rippled across the room. They were coiled with the afterglow of their recent performance. Yet Lisa sensed an unspoken question lingering in the air. What next? Today, we're going to explore the themes of identity and vulnerability, she announced, her voice steady yet laced with the gravity of her intentions. She introduced the concept of unearthing personal myths, individual narratives that resonate more profoundly than any scripted performance. The students exchanged glances, some nodding, others appearing apprehensive. Lisa felt their unease, recognizing it from her own confrontation with self-doubt. But she firmed her resolve. This was necessary. She broke them into small groups, urging them to share their personal stories, fractured or whole experiences that shaped them, fears that loomed, dreams that fluttered like moths in the darkness. Lisa moved through the clusters, providing encouragement as her students reluctantly allowed their layers to peel back. She listened intently, witnessing glimmers of authenticity that previously lay dormant. She watched as vulnerability transformed into strength. Rachel recounted her struggles with expectations, while Elijah shared the burden of living up to his family's legacy. Each narrative echoed, resonating a deep chord within Lisa as it mirrored her own internal complexities. Yet amid this shared journey, she felt her own hurdles rising like walls that threatened to box her in. How could she guide them if she herself was shrouded in uncertainty? When it was time for her to lead a discussion, she hesitated briefly, contemplating how to disclose her own experiences without detracting from her students' revelations. In that moment, she realized the importance of modeling vulnerability, not just telling them that it was vital, but showing it through tangible, palpable honesty. When I was your age, I often felt lost, disconnected from who I was supposed to be. There were stories in my life that frightened me, stories I have yet to unpack fully. The words felt both terrifying and liberating. The silence that followed was heavy yet electric. Lisa saw recognition dawn on their faces. She saw the search for understanding mirrored back. This was the delicate dance of trust and artistry they were all a part of. With each sentence that tumbled from her lips, a door of possibility opened not just for her students, but for herself. The courage it took for her to share created a psychic space, inviting her students to engage even more deeply. As they moved forward with discussions, she recognized an exhilarating shift. Their shared narratives became a cauldron of growth and connection. By the end of the class, a budding sense of community began to blossom. They weren't just individuals exploring their own truths. They were a collective force of creativity, emerging from the depths of introspection. With each passing day, the urgency to confront her own fears nagged at her relentlessly. Could she inspire them further if her own truths remained unexamined? As she watched them embrace their vulnerabilities, she grapples anew with her own decisions. Tomorrow loomed with unlimited potential, beckoning Lisa to face the unfinished stories within her. What narratives continued to lurk in the shadows, awaiting her? And would she possess the audacity to bring them into the light? As the bell rang, releasing her students into the world, Lisa felt the weight of revelation pressing against her chest, a guiding compass for what lay ahead. The classroom buzzed with anticipatory energy, a palpable tension in the air, as Lisa prepared for yet another day of exploration. The recent performances had truly catalyzed a shift, both in her students and within herself. No longer were they simply reciting myths. They were weaving their histories and experiences into narratives of resilience and identity, a collaborative tapestry of self-discovery that exhilarated her soul. As Lisa stepped into the room, she marveled at this transformation. Students eagerly shared their interpretations of ancient tales, each connection forging a bridge to their own realities. No longer did she stand alone as the leading voice. Instead, she felt welcomed into a community of storytellers, each one carving out their personal journeys alongside her. Today, we'll dive deeper, she announced, her voice steady and infused with newfound confidence. We'll explore how vulnerabilities shape our narratives and allow us to connect to the world around us. The room fell silent, curiosity glimmering in the students' eyes. They sensed the gravity of this moment. They were about to delve further into uncharted territory. In groups, they began to peel back layers of their pasts, merging myth with lived experience. How a set's resilience resonated with personal struggles, or how the duality of Set embodied the conflict they faced in society. It was an exhilarating process, one that fused raw emotion with creative expression. Lisa moved among them, feeling a surge of pride as insights blossomed. Yet amidst this surge, Lisa faced her own reflection in the stories shared. Unexamined experiences still lay dormant within her, their shadows flickering ominously at the edge of her consciousness. How could she continue encouraging her students to excavate their truths without confronting her own? This internal conflict simmered below her excitement, urging her to confront her past. That night, she sat with a notebook, struggling to articulate her own journey. How she had navigated doubts and insecurities on her path to teaching. She pored over page after page, capturing moments where she had felt lost or uncertain, moments when she had disconnected from her passions. The catharsis was profound. Acknowledging her fears freed her, allowing remnants of shame and hesitation to unfurl under the light of reflection. Over the following weeks, as the lessons progressed, Lisa's vulnerability burgeoned into formidable strength. Students began to notice her transparency, the way she shared pieces of her own journey intertwined with their studies. One afternoon, as they sat in a circle, Lisa disclosed her long-held aspiration of being an author, a dream shadowed by fears of inadequacy. But storytelling has always resonated with me, she said, daring herself to embrace that passion once again. There's a power in sharing what we've been through, and that includes our dreams. Encouraged, her students shared their hopes and fears, revealing ambitions they had quietly harbored. In that moment of mutual authenticity, Lisa felt their stories fused together into a vibrant mosaic of resilience and ambition, the classroom transforming into a sanctuary of exploration. They were crafting not only interpretations of mythology but a narrative about their emerging selves. As they prepared for another project, a showcase of their own stories tied to thematic representations of resilience and identity, Lisa witnessed profound growth. Students began taking ownership of their narratives, sharing reflections that revealed their inner complexities. They infused ancient tales with modern interpretations, and vocalized how they yearned to pursue dreams long suppressed by fear. The showcase materialized into a festival of personal truth, emphasizing not merely performance but an emotional investment in their identities. Eventually, the night of the showcase arrived, filled with excitement but also a hint of trepidation. Lisa joined her students, acknowledging the emotional currents pulsating through the room, standing side by side as a collective. They had worked hard, and now they were about to unveil their stories to an audience, an act she could only describe as terrifyingly beautiful. As the lights dimmed, excitement filled the air. Each student rose to share their interpretations. The spoken words flew, each narrative resonating not only within the audience but profoundly within Lisa's heart. She reveled in their artistic expressions, witnessing firsthand how courage transmogrified into creativity. Finally, it was time for her to share. Clutching a notebook filled with her own reflections, Lisa stepped into the spotlight, vulnerability coursing through her veins. "Tonight is not about perfection," she began, voice strong but tinged with raw emotion. "It's about every step we've taken on our journey together, embracing failures, successes, and dreams alike." As she spoke, she highlighted the interconnectedness of their stories, the way they resonated with ancient myths, while weaving together their individual experiences. A thunder of applause enveloped her at the end, and in that moment, Lisa understood that the true measure of success was not the applause itself but the compassionate exploration they had embarked upon together. Each one of them expanded into something greater, a collective strength unfolding as they projected their voices into the world. As the night drew to a close, Lisa felt a definitive shift within herself. No longer was she confined to the teacher's desk. She stood alongside her students as a fellow seeker, embodying courage and authenticity, not just in her classroom but in her life. In the waking hours that followed, a serene clarity washed over her. She teetered on the brink of a new chapter, determined to embrace her identity as both facilitator and storyteller. With renewed purpose, Lisa stepped into her future, ready to weave her own narratives alongside those of her students, embodying connection, resilience, and authentic growth. Take this moment to acknowledge your own stories. Don't wait another second to embrace your journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this transformative ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.